on the back side of the face, and I had to take my hand and I had to go all the way back like that. And well,
That's crazy.
that's how I that's how I saved Christmas
Hmm.
that year.
And all three of my children's lives.
That's how we should start. Like we're in the middle of like this amazing story that everybody wishes they understood what we were talking about.
Perfect. And it just keeps getting more and more elaborate every week.
Next week it'll be your turn, which I guess we'll get to do together. No, no, no. You'll be back. You'll be back in Utah. Y'all are going back on Wednesday.
Wednesday. Wednesday is the day
Okay.
returning.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess we'll both be on our maybe we'll both be on our phones next week. Well,
Well,
Chris, good to see you.
yeah.
Chris and I get to spend some time together in person, which I'm really looking forward to. Can't wait to be with
Yeah.
you and your crew.
Be great. Be great. Hey, Spencer, have you made more than 3 mistakes at your gym?
Man, I when you so Chris texted me. He was like, "Hey, let's talk about the mistakes we made." It's like, man, this could be a really long unedited session. I
It's a
mean, we're
session.
talking basically like 30 years between us of things that we've done wrong.
It'll be
I-
really hard to come up with 6 things between the two. Really hard.
but yeah, that's what we're going to talk about today. Is man, if you're and maybe I think probably a lot of this stuff. We're both in fitness, but my guess is that anybody that's owned a business, regardless of the industry, uh, might relate to some of the things that come up. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. You would think. So let's, and I think so. Part of the reason we thought it'd be cool to talk about this last week, we talked a little bit about um, just kind of what Sojourn is, how to use it as a way to help customize where we think, sort of, a little bit of insight into where we think some of the culture and community could could be served well and going. Um, and then I remember you saying maybe like a bunch of goodies on, give them the goods on how to do that. But before we get into that, I think it would be really to help people understand the mistakes that we made and maybe what helped us get there. And also
Yeah.
keeping in mind that, hey guys, this is just our experience. You guys like that dinging? Jeez. You guys, this is just our experience. And I'm a big believer that there's not necessarily a one size fits all for every business. It depends on the demographic, it depends on the culture you want to create. So it's not a cookie cutter mentality, but I do think will be some common threads of the top three, which I mean, I don't even know that I could classify, but like the top 3 mistakes that come to mind, maybe I should say, not
Yeah.
top three, but giving them some insight. So when did you start your gym? You 08?
Oh wait. Yeah.
Okay,
And
cool.
you were oh 07.
Yep.
Yeah.
So about the same time. I was April, I think of April or May of 07. So yeah.
And I think, man, one of the things that I made a mistake in is thinking that it was a one size fits all. It's funny that you said that, but we'll get there eventually. And maybe what would be helpful is, to whoever's listening to this years from now, as this conversation is recorded and saved for all generations to appreciate, that when we first started, there was not there was no curriculum, there was no structure on how we were supposed to go about this. And so I imagine a lot of the mistakes that we've made as we get into it, I know for me, a lot of it stemmed from starting this just out of a place of passion. I have a desire to help people, but not coming from a business background. And so,
Yeah.
I truly stumbled into this just because I really liked it. But it wasn't a conscious decision where it's like, okay, so 15 years into the future, here's what it'll look like, and here's how I'll support my family. Like none of that, at least how I began. So I think that's important because I imagine that if man, even if we talked about this recently, that if we were our age, how we would do things differently if we were to start today. And I think both of us like,
Oh wow.
man, I don't know if I'd actually do it again, but
Yeah. Hey, hey, hey.
what's something that comes to your mind, Chris?
Yeah, so very similar to Spencer. Stumbled into this more as a passion, and I remember telling myself when we went from just being in the rec center, I was working in the ski shop, still as total ski bum, working in the ski shop and training people legitimately. I mean, I started with my first client, I was charging them $170 a month and doing one-on-ones with them 5 days a week. Like that, I was running a class, and it was one guy. And so and I was like, oh my gosh, someone's paying me to do this.
What a
And
sucker.
but oh my gosh. And looking back, I was probably making like $3 an hour. You know what I mean? Not a good use of time. But I was so fired up. Someone would pay me, $170 for 30 days, a month,
How long did that go on?
2 months.
So
And
so for 2 months you only had one member of your gym.
yeah,
Yeah.
the first paying member. I mean, the first member, technically the first. Yeah, he was the first paying member of the gym.
That's so good.
So, and so when we made the choice to go from the rec center where we started in the corner of the rec center, then we went to a really really small facility, and it was. I remember telling myself, how silly is this? I signed a 5-year lease, which you're obligated to, and I remember telling myself that if it didn't work within 2 years, I would stop.
Yeah.
Signed a 5-year lease. Like, how do you get out of that? Anyway, um, but there have been a lot of iterations, a lot of changes, a lot of ways to evolve it. And one of the first things, the no order of importance, that I realized, we'll go with like overarching, right? Is that I have made the mistake of putting. This is going to sound really bad, I think, but if you have owned a small business, I think you will be able to understand. And for those of you that don't and are maybe coaches, it might be a way to look at things through a different lens, right?
Oh, great way of
Um,
saying that.
yeah. So I made the mistake of putting um, trainers and their potential before the overall health of the business.
Mm.
Not just me, and like my income, but what's the actual, like, let's separate it, right? So what's the actual health of the business and how is it supporting itself? And then how is that providing an income for me and my family? Those are like two different things, right? But the business has to be doing well in order for it to sustain the owner and the trainer and the member, right? And I made the mistake of really trying to create an environment where trainers had it really good in regards to pay per hour or um, the amount of percentage the gym was taking of one-on-ones or allowing them to use the space for free, running other programs out of it, all in
Mhm.
an effort to just make this really great, awesome environment for everybody, unknowing or not paying attention to the fact that it was in actuality siphoning the health of the business, and eventually comes a day where that cannot sustain itself.
Yeah. Man, that's not one of the things I thought of, but I definitely can relate to that. And I think why do you think that is? I'll ask you that. Why do you think? Because I don't think we're the only two guys that have done that, and um, we use the word sacrificed something else in order to really try to take care of people, maybe above and beyond what's even appropriate.
Yeah,
Why do you think that's the struggle of a business owner?
I think it was two things for me. One is that at the time, and even still, at the time I was working for CrossFit headquarters, so I had supplemental income. Essentially, that's how I was paying for my. And then online programming, right? That kind of phased into that with Spiel programming, and so that's how I provided for my family. So in some way, it was easy for me to kind of sweep under the rug. Well, hey, the the gym's over here, and like I've got this separate business over here, and this is supporting my family and doing well. But as long as as long as my trainers at the gym are happy, like everything's going to be good. So I'll just kind of sweep under the rug those hard numbers that actually make that a sustainable business. And if this over here can prop this up, then it's working. So that was one. And then two, realistically, those people are friends. They
Yeah.
they did not start as a hello, here's my resume. What do you think of this? And I was able to critically think and sift through these 10 or 15 different applicants and have this I am your boss mentality. No, they were my friends that I had known for 15, 20 years, or started in the gym as a client, and I developed a relationship with them, and they grew into a trainer, and hung out with them outside of the gym. They came to the CrossFit games to support me,
Hmm.
and it feels like a different relationship than a boss employer relationship.
Yeah, man. It's so complicated because with what we do, I think that we naturally are friends with those that we get to work with because we have so much in common, which is maybe different than if we were running an accounting firm,
Yeah.
because there's this overlap with what we do for a hobby and then what we do to help other people. So I think it's like yeah, it's a tricky crossover to navigate. And one of the things that I did think is that, and I think this ties into what you're saying, is you start to believe that everyone's the same because of that. And
Mhm.
you like this, I like this, we both like to help people, but there's a little there's a little difference, and it's that those guys have no risk,
Yeah.
meaning that every day I wake up, there's and the fact that we both own our buildings, it's the same. There's a significant amount of risk that we take on that unfortunately, and I think it's us that it's unfortunate to, because I think deep down we want to just let it be a clubhouse where we're all hanging out, which is why we've made this mistake. I think that's a big part of it. It's like, man, I just want everybody to be happy and want everybody just to have like a great time. But it's that indistinguishable fact that unfortunately separates a business owner from everyone else. And because of that, there's some responsibility that no matter, this is my opinion, no matter how well you communicate it, they won't fully know unless they're in that seat. And they can't be in that seat because you're in that seat. And so you do your best with the English language to try to communicate that. But the truth is like, it's just not the same. I don't think that means, because there's lots of times, would you agree? There's lots of times like, man, what if I was like just a coach? I kind of daydream about that. It's like, man, what if I just showed up and all I did was coach? I like to tell people that's a that's the favorite part of my day is
Like,
just
yeah.
doing that because I don't have to think about any of the other stuff.
Yeah.
So anyways, I'm kind of rambling, but man, I just wanted to affirm that I get what you're saying.
Yeah. And it's easy to fall into that trap, if that's the right term, if you're not mindful of it, because it's just eventually it won't become sustainable. Eventually someone has to make difficult decisions for the benefit of the entire business, which benefits the trainer, the community, the owner, everyone, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes those decisions are not popular, and sometimes they will affect people differently. I would hesitate to say negatively, but they will just, it's change, right? It could be a change, and people don't always like change, and that can be hard. And I understand that, but that it will catch up someday. That
Hmm.
owner or person who I think ultimately is on the hook, right, has the most risk, has to make a decision in order for the overall well-being of the business.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about that I think there is this there's a possibility in business that if those three entities, the people that you serve, the coaches that do the servicing, and then the business, and the business as an extension is you and I, because we're the ones that take on the risk. I think there is a way where all three of those entities can be satisfied.
Yep.
However, I think what's tricky is the definition of satisfaction. And
Yeah.
I was never taught, hey, this is where your margins should be. This is where, this is how much profit a business like yours should expect to have. This is how much rent should cost. This is all your expenses. If you're over this, man, you got to do something to shore that up. Like I think if I had been given some of that information to start, then maybe I wouldn't have fallen into that trap. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. Okay, give me, so that's one of mine. What about you?
Well, I think it's a nice parlay into this, is that as I look back, there were so many things that I made decisions with that was like just based purely on emotion. And a lot of it is what we're talking about. It's like, man, were there people involved that you love? And it's like, this guy's not an employee of mine. This guy's like a brother to me.
Yeah.
It's been really hard to not make those emotional decisions. And then you compare that to somebody who's really good at business, and you realize, like, man, they rarely do that. They rarely are thinking about people's feelings. It's just like facts, and here's what needs to happen, and now let's navigate this in a way that has grace and consideration for others, but that doesn't change the facts here. And I think I don't know, there's a balance that can probably be met with what we do, which is very relational. I think that's the business we're really in. It's not,
Yeah.
like, there's so many parts of, like, the environment's important, the people are important, the workouts are important. Um, but it's like a relationship with people. But even that, you can you can reduce down to like things that are pretty black and white. It's like, hey, it's a relationship with people. Well, did you call that person? No. Okay, how do you know you have a relationship with them? And I think I was just like, I don't know if that makes sense, Chris, but
Yeah.
I feel like in business, and maybe this isn't just fitness, but it's really not personal. It's really, if we're on the hook, then the decisions that we make, it's not one person's welfare does not supersede like this whole machine and this whole engine that's at work. And I wish somebody had shared that with me early on, because I feel like I only know that now because I've been scuffed up enough to be like, hey, that just doesn't really work. Like that way of making decisions, it just like doesn't work very well.
Yeah. And so I think, and this might sound, this helped me a lot. You told me this as I was going through a big season of change. And for some of you guys, this is going to sound, I think, callous, but it does help understand the unique position of maybe a business owner. Is it a relational business? Yes. Right? It's relational. I think there's a massive part of what my goal is to connect with people on a daily basis. I
Hmm.
have this kind of mentality. So, I have this mentality where it stems from like a position of my faith and scripture, but there's this concept where for those of you guys that maybe understand this, it's this idea that Jesus is welcoming everyone to the table, right? This concept that everyone's welcome, not just the people that, we prefer or we get along with, but like everyone's welcome to the table. So I try to create that environment at my gym. I try to create an environment where everyone's welcome. I know them by name. I address them by name. But the reality is that these people are paying me for a service,
Mm,
and that it ultimately is a business transaction. And if they are not getting the results that they want or expect, or the experience that they want, they will go somewhere else.
mhm,
And that does not mean that you can't have relationships with people. But I think both you and I, because we like the relational side of it, and because we want it to be this cool clubhouse where everyone gets along and high fives and chest bumps all the time, it's easy to forget that although some of these clients, I know very well, some of them are the people that I could call at 1 in the morning and say, hey, I need help. But the overwhelming majority of those people, although we are friendly with them and we are friends, right? It's a business transaction. And that has helped me separate that, because instead I start to get upset if I feel like they don't understand my point of view,
mhm,
or why are they leaving? What did I do wrong?
mhm,
Or, I mean, fill in the blank, right?
mhm,
And ultimately, this sounds so bad, right? But like, those people are not your friends, like someone that you could confide in and pick up the phone and say, hey, Spencer, I'm having a tough day at the gym and like these things are going on. How do I navigate this leadership side of things? Or how do I, like, you and I have that relationship, but that's not the same relationship that I have with my entire membership list. I think there's, one person that I can think of that I could have those conversations with. And it's easy to cross that line.
mhm.
Does that sound bad?
No, man, I think that's what's hard about all the stuff that we're talking about is that, those the statistic of people that have been running a small business for over 10 years is like 4%.
Crazy, right?
Yeah, that means there's the 96% fatality rate with what we're talking about. Like a lot of the stuff is hard, and I think it's even more challenging where, you say like, "Hey, what's at face value here and what you think is going on?" It's more intricate and it's more nuanced than that. Yes, you guys do have a friendship, but this friend is paying you money.
Yeah.
That's tricky.
Different, right?
Yeah,
Like, how
it's
many friends
tricky.
do you have out there in your regular friend circle that there's some kind of business transaction going on?
Yeah, so it's not equally yoked, to use a Christianese term. And it's not supposed to be. Um,
Yeah.
you guys have just kinda stumbled into the fact that, like, they're a great person, you're a great person, but I think where we get blindsided is we say everything's good, and you take it for granted, and you say, "Man, this person likes me so much, there's nothing that they can do. There's nothing that I can do rather that would make them leave." And it's
Right.
at that point that you've taken that relationship and all the nuances of it for granted, and you failed to realize that people's life change. And I think that's something that we talk about around here, because at the end of the month, everybody's in a tizzy to make sure that we're playing defense, and all those that haven't come in, it's like, we're giving them the attention that they deserve, but inevitably it's really hard every single time when someone leaves the gym because of this thing that we're talking about. It's like we had this perspective that things were good, but in their mind, it's like it's not.
Yeah. I like how you put that too, is
Mm,
this concept that, because I think it shows respect to that member and friend when you say that you've taken for granted all the nuances of the relationship. So it's
mm,
not that it's bad. It's not a bad thing. It's just a different form of relationship. And I think when you fail to recognize that is when we as business owners fail to serve them as best as we can, because like you said, it becomes this, well, they must like me so much that they'll show up no matter what.
Hmm.
And that's just not true, you know. And that's on our shoulders.
And also, it's a our worlds aren't exactly the same. You know, you and I, our world revolves around this stuff. And so when we see this person for the hour and it seems like they're good, we just assume, well, their life must revolve around this as well. And so
Yeah.
by proxy of that hour, everything is good. And and I think
They
that's
get
also,
hours a day outside of the gym.
yeah, I like to remind myself, I was like, man, we would like to think that everyone's life revolves around exercise, but it really doesn't. And a lot of times there's a lot of moving parts that we're not even aware of when people make decisions. But it comes back to what we said in the beginning. There is no there's no mistake in trying to have a relationship with people. Like that's a good thing. I
Yeah.
think you just do it with a little asterisk at the very bottom. It's like, yes, pursue this exactly like you would any other friendship, but just remember, you work for them.
Right. Great point. Um, Great point. And like with that, so I'll give you my second
Okay.
mistake, okay, is the feeling of guilt to charge people for my professional services.
Oh man, that's such a good one.
Right? Like, so for me, I think again, it bleeds into this concept that no, they're my friend. It's like, no, I work for them, right? And no, if I have a professional set, I'm not going to go to a massage therapist that I know and expect them to give me half off or do that service for free. You know, like I know I'm going to spend $160 for, an hour and a half or 2 hours. But for whatever reason, how crazy is this, right? If I worked at your gym, if I worked at your gym and I walked in there and I was like, Spencer's my boss, he's the dude, and I'm going to try to acquire one on one clients, there would not be a sliver of me that would feel bad about trying to charge people for that one on one.
Right.
But when I own the business and when I am the one running it for whatever reason, I don't know what you call it, but there's has been in the past, I've gotten over it, this guilt of feeling like I need to, okay, we're going to say the bad word, right? Have a sales conversation with somebody and charge them appropriately for the service I can provide. Because that, I think, is this taboo word in the CrossFit world. I think because of the relational aspect
Hmm.
and because maybe we've been taught that, well, everybody should just be able to come into class and do it. But some people need more help. Some people want more help. Some people are worse off without your one-on-one attention. Some people, the trajectory of their life will be worse if you don't have the conversation with them and say, hey, Spencer, I really think I can help you with these things. And that could be accountability. It could be nutrition, just helping you get strong. It could be help you run that half marathon. I mean, fill in the blank, right? And if you don't have that mental shift of saying like, hey, I can really make a difference in this person's life and I should be paid for that because this is what I do for a living, I think you will lose clients because you won't be able to serve them as best as you can. And I think you'll lose your business because you won't be able to get paid what you're worth.
Yeah. Yeah. I have so many like amens I want to say to what you just said. Um, I think that's tough for anyone in this industry if they're being honest with themselves. But some of that is because most of us have a story of how this changed our lives, and it's so special, and a lot of the experiences that we had, it wasn't wrapped up into potentially like paying a lot of money for it. And also, I think we discount all the things that we know about this. A lot of the conversations we have with our staff, it's like, man, I don't, and I'm quoting, I don't know if I would pay for that. And I say, well, look, man, a mechanic also doesn't feel like they should pay
Yeah,
for an auto shop. And it's because they know how to do all that stuff.
that's a great correlation.
And it's different. it's different when it's different based on what you think this job includes, so if it's, and you said this and I think it's important, if it's just playing great music and being like a glorified group fitness instructor, yeah, I could kind of see
Yeah.
where today, when there's so many options and we see where that price point is, that would be a hard sell. But when you broaden the scope and you think long term, what this person is really providing for you, accountability, a guide, meeting you at each step of these different stages of your life and potentially customizing and changing things and working with injuries and babies and job changes and all this stuff, it becomes a much different service and a much different value. And I think that's important. I was listening to some TED talk about how valuable nutrition is in combating mental health. So stay with me. And
Yeah.
she quoted the omnivore's dilemma. And it was a quote that I forgot about, but he says there's no such thing as cheap food. It's like what you think you're getting away with now, there are long-term repercussions. And in my mind this week, I've been meditating. It's like, man, there's no such thing as like cheap training. Like
Yeah.
the thing that you think you're getting away with like the $25 boot camp, do that
Yeah.
do that for 15 years and
What,
tell me if that was worth it.
yeah. Like, what was your return on that investment?
Right.
Or what, like, yeah, exactly. That's a great point.
So I think, man, we're so short-sighted. Like everything we do is just like, what's immediately going to happen? And I think with, uh, man, training, it's no different. It's like, how many years do we just chase that feeling of being on the floor?
Yeah.
Or even today, it's like, man, I kind of chase that feeling of feeling like my muscles are full of blood, or that I have like this sweat going on, maybe not like feeling like I'm going to throw up. And
Right.
I think it's hard for us as human beings, like not to look for like some short term hit to like justify why this is worth it. But when you have that long term perspective, I think it changes what you're willing to do right now. And I think anybody who's ever injured themselves, they can go back and say, what would you have been willing to do or pay or commit to keep this from happening? And I
Yeah.
think most responses is like, I would do quite a bit. I would
Yeah.
do quite a bit.
Almost anything I could. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great point. You got another one for you? Another one for you?
Yeah. I think it kind of, piggybacks off of what we're saying, is that one size like doesn't fit all. And also, I think it's good to remember for an embarrassingly long amount of time, I thought that when someone did something in the gym, it was a cause and effect of the results that they should have. So if I had somebody do a 5x5 back squat and linear progressed it, there was not a high likelihood or a correlation. It was 100% that they should respond this way. And so I took that hubris or kind of reducing down how this stuff works. And I thought, well, everybody should respond to everything that we program. And some of that was, the elegant solution and methodology that we were presented through
Yeah.
CrossFit, and it just made so much sense. But as you fast forward to today, you realize what we're really doing is we're introducing these variables that we hope will will somehow affect your body in a way that it has to compensate. But it's not a cause and effect. It's just a really strong correlation that we think like, man, we've done this so many times that if you stand and squat with weight on your shoulders, we like your chances of getting stronger. But not to make something that's it's not rocket science, like way more complicated, but I just think that I misunderstood how uh, you know, disrupting homeostasis really works.
Mm-hmm.
And I was too dumb to see that not everybody responds to training like the same way. And some of that is like what we talked about last week. It's like, man, what's your background look like compared to mine? And how old you are and what other things you got going on in your life and injuries you've had and anthropometry and all this stuff. It doesn't mean that that person needs to be banished in the corner doing something, very unique, but this whole just vary the load and you're good is just, yeah, it's not true.
Do you think it works for a segment of the population?
For sure.
Yeah, right. So I think like let's clarify, right? Because I think this is where things get cumbersome. Is I do
Good
think
word.
the piece of the method that is elegant in that way, right? In that even poor programming can work, but I think it depends on the person. Just like you said, like what's their previous experience? Do they have any injuries? What are their outside life variables? So I think there's this, it becomes confusing sometimes, even to myself,
Totally.
where you see some people that you would never assume would have a response to what you're providing. And within a 2 or 3 month window, you're like, oh my gosh, they have adapted, changed so much.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see other people that have taken that same approach. You're like, well, they don't really look any different.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there is a segment of the population that does respond to that. But I also 100% agree that that leads itself to it's not a one size fits all. Because if that was the case, every single person in your gym would have the exact same journey and response to the training that or programming that you've provided. And that everyone would lose the same amount of weight and increase the same amount of muscle and have, the same amount of confidence and, fill in the blank. And that's just not
Mm-hmm.
big.
Yeah, man. Um, yeah, I agree. I think that, if we took a group of people that haven't trained very much, and we talked about this way back when, like hypothetically, if you had
Yeah.
somebody that's 18, no injuries, never trained before, like what would you do?
Yeah.
It could and I think this is the important distinction. Could you introduce a bunch of different ways of training and could they respond? I think probably they would respond to everything because they've never done anything.
Yeah.
So that's a little tricky. So to say like this one thing works isn't really true because a lot of things would work in that same context. But I think yeah, you don't want to make it cumbersome. You don't want to make it overly complicated. But I think two things are good principles to follow. Where most people are starting is probably where we should finish nutritionally. Instead of starting with the carnivore diet, like like maybe that's where we finish after going through like a nice progression of basics.
Yeah.
Instead of starting with the CrossFit Open, like maybe that's where we should finish after like a long time of progression and so on and so forth. And then, the second thing is I think that, if you see one person and it's like, whoa, they progressed really well. And then you see another person, it's like they didn't progress very well. The person that progressed, you nailed it. Like their limiting factor is what you gave them. And they were able to control everything else in their life and respond really well to that. And the person that didn't, it means that wasn't the thing that was like grossly oversight in their life. And so it's like you gotta. That's what makes this in my mind like so fun. It's like you got to find the other thing that it is, and
Yeah.
maybe it's something stupid that isn't even that complicated. It's like, oh, well, you just you have 8 Dr. Peppers a day. It's like doesn't matter what.
Burn the candle at both ends, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's like that constant peeling the onion back with that.
Hmm.
And that I think takes, like we've talked about, more understanding and more of a professional approach and not just the, slap a sticker on it, one size fits all. Um, yeah, it's a great point. I'm trying to think of like a third one for me. Um, that really like resonates or comes to mind? Because like you said, we've talked so much in depth about just so many of the things that really, yeah, really hit home. I'm trying to think if I can separate a little bit from like the relational side of things. um, do you have a third one that like really comes to mind?
Well, this is something I've been thinking about recently in that, there's a great business book, E Myth Revisited, where he talks about like, within business, there's the person that's, sometimes a business owner is an artist. So like if you're cutting hair, it's like, man, you just love cutting hair. And then there's the manager, and it's like the person that's responsible for just taking care of the staff. And then there's the entrepreneur that just loves vision, loves creation, loves being on the cutting edge of stuff. And I think a mistake that I made is that because I was good at coaching, that's where I should spend all my time.
Mm,
And sometimes, and I want to say that, with great hesitation, because depending on who's listening to this, um, there are times where it's like, man, that's absolutely necessary. When
yeah,
when a business starts, and then at certain seasons, it's like I found myself needing to get back into coaching more. But based on this whole conversation that we've had, it's like as you continue to evolve, you should be good enough at coaching that you can transmit everything that you need someone to get out of that to someone else,
hmm,
so that you might be able to, because it's just the problem I found is like if I was coaching 20 hours a week, it was really hard for me to do like much of anything else. And
yeah,
I think I would get frustrated. It's like, man, why aren't we able to do this, or how come this ball's being dropped? And I realized like, well, man, I'm just painting over here.
yeah,
I'm just cutting hair over here. Like, how can I how can I point the finger at anyone but myself? And I think that has taken me the whole time that I have been in business to be aware of, but be totally incompetent at doing anything about it.
yeah,
And I think it's still a struggle. And some of that is because it's a different skill set. And so that's the comforting thought for me. It's like fitness. I don't want to say I'm God's gift to coaching, but I know a couple of things about fitness at this
yeah,
point in time. For me to keep going down that rabbit hole of information, is it going to serve my coaches and the people that we take care of and the business as a whole? Will that be the best use of my time? Probably not. And so I think I have to like stack these skills. And so for me, it's like it's getting into stuff that 10 years ago would have just been like my idea of a nightmare. It's like figuring out marketing and sales and like all this stuff, but it's like it's like necessary at this point for what we're doing and like what we need to do. So I think I misunderstood as an owner, not as an operator, but as an
yeah,
owner, like what my job really is. And I think that job is like this acquisition of skills, and to keep stacking these skills, and to not be the best coach in your gym, and to not be the only person that can do this stuff, but to always be like a step ahead of everyone on your staff, and then turn around and be like, hey, so this is what I know about nutrition, and then learn something else and be like, hey, so this is what I know about this. And
yeah,
then it's like, hey, so this is what I know about sales. Okay, let's go try and do this. And that's a much different perspective than not the early years where we didn't know what we were doing, but it's like even like last year, even like last month, like that's a pretty new revelation to me. It's like, man, if I want to keep doing this, I can't just be like the smartest guy
yeah,
about fitness at my
yeah.
gym.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that rings so true, man.
Mm,
I've thought the same thing, right? Because here's the other situation that I think we're in, and it's a question worth people asking, right? Like, is this really what you are going to do as your jam for the rest of your life? you and I are in a little different position, because when you talk about on the hook, we have an investment in the building that our gym is run out of. And without the gym and its success, that rent cannot be paid. I'm not interested in being a landlord at this point in time. So I don't really feel like renting that out, right? That's not
Hmm.
what I want to do. Um, but if it really is what you want to do, one of the things I'm looking forward to this week is just being able to spend time with you and us talk through, like, what are we going to do in 5 years?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, like in 5 years, you'll be what, almost 45. I'll be almost 48.
60. Oh yeah, 48. 48. Yeah.
And that's like, that's not young. It's definitely not old, right? But when I start to think about 5 year blocks and what does this look like, in 5 years, I'm 48. Another 5 years, well, I'm 52. Another
Hmm.
5 years, I'm 57. And you start to break it up into these 5 year increments, and things feel much more urgent, I think,
Hmm.
or at least like they need to have a better plan. So I think it's really worth people asking themselves, hey, is this what I want to do? Like, really what I want to do for the rest of my life? And if the answer is yes, I think we need to have, like you said earlier, a much more long term approach. And so that means that we need to be able to be putting ourselves in a position where we're facilitating, we're developing, we're helping mold, helping grow people under us, right?
Yeah.
That work for us, so that we can have a an amazing product and system and gym and facility, but we're able to slowly eventually kind of step back, right? Because that, I think it'd be silly to say, for me, the dream would be to have it be incredibly profitable, right? All relative what that means, but have it be very profitable, have trainers just crushing it, have someone that essentially their job is to manage the gym and cultivate trainers. My job, that's not my job anymore. I've taught them how to do it and they get paid well, and I get to roll in and coach class when I want to coach class,
Hmm.
because that's like what I love doing, and everything. And gosh, so I do think it takes a lot of effort to get there. And I
I
thought, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I think like my answer is exactly the same thing. But I think it's beautiful how what we're talking about, because we love it and because we think this is our vocation and not just a job, that to get to where we want to be, it's kind of coming full circle back to where we were in the beginning, where it's like I don't want to get to a point where I don't come into the gym. In fact, I want to come into the gym every single day.
Yeah.
I just don't want to have to.
Yeah.
I don't think, the definition of luxury is like me going on all these vacations over and over again. I like to work. I like this stuff. I've like come a long way, and so I want to keep doing it. But I want to do all this stuff without having to be somewhere at a certain time. And I think
Yeah.
if we could get there in 5 years, I would just want to be up at the gym and just love on people, and
Yeah.
just be like, man, let's sit down and have a cup of coffee. Like, tell me what's going on with you.
Yeah.
And that, I think, for anybody in our position, if they could be honest, it's like, man, it would be cool to come full circle to kind of
Uh,
how the gym was when we first started it.
yeah. Totally. Totally. So I'll give you my third one. I think this
Okay,
will be,
great.
yeah, this will be, I think it'll ring very similar to what you said earlier, is kind of like you said, making decisions off of passion, right?
Mhm.
This is also probably going to sound bad, but feedback can be your worst enemy. And the reason I say that, and people are probably like, what? That's insane. I really believe it, in the sense that it goes back to what we talked about earlier. We've done things in the past where, we've had these surveys, and hey, what do you think about the coaches, and mark them on their scale of 1 to 5, from professionalism to knowledge to what about the retail items that we have, and how about the class hours in the open gym, and would you like to have an Olympic lifting class, and what about that cool gymnastics class over here,
Yeah.
and like what. And here's what you will, I think, soon realize, is that when you are running a business where it is relational, like we talked about, and where people probably have a higher level of comfort and they have accessibility to the owner, they will generally be looking, it's not bad. I do the same thing when it's not my work, right? They're looking out for themselves, right? So they're generally saying, well, yeah, of course. Like, I would love if you would carry shorts in the retail thing. And like, can you have it be embroidered with CFDC?
Oh man.
Like, oh, you are thinking about having coconut water? I will totally buy a coconut water
Mhm.
every day. Did you say you were going to have a barbell class? Because I'd be the first one to sign up for that. I'll be there every day. And I made these decisions at times based off of what people said they wanted. But of course, they're going to say that. That sounds great. Like, I would say the same thing if I was a paying member. I'd be like, yeah, like I could have the option to have the barbell club. But what I neglected to realize is like these things all cost money. Like, and I
Yeah.
can't open a barbell class and open gym and carry coconut water and order the shorts and not look at like the hard numbers. I have to be able to pay for that service so that people can enjoy it. And there were seasons in my in my ownership where I'd be like, oh wow, people want a barbell class, we should open one next week starting Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 p.m. And I legitimately lost significant amount of money by paying the trainer to be there and not having enough people come to the class.
You know, this is so funny because when it happens to me, this this happens like every single time. Hey, everybody wants the machine. And so my mind is like, whoa, you know, like what I picture is like people are coming with torches and they're gonna like bang on the door and there's like this huge angry mob. It's like, man, if I don't make this, you know, like we're gonna lose. And I realize it's just that one person.
Yeah.
It's just that one. You know, I've talked to so many people and they said like they really need like a 10:30 a.m. class.
Yeah.
And then now I want to be like, yeah, yeah, give me 10 people that said they want that and I'll do it.
Right.
But in you know, and I don't say it with
I
that
know.
cavalier, but in my mind I was like, this is just you. It's totally like the squeaky wheel. And I think what's hard is like, man, with what we do, that could be we should have another conversation of just like programming specifically, but it's like impossible to make every single person
Yeah.
happy. And so if there's all these different ways that you can navigate it, I just kind of think like, man, it's probably not something we should put on a live podcast. It's like, I'm just going to do things the way that I think. And, you know, if there's something going wrong, like we've learned so much from negative feedback. And so I really appreciate that. But like your opinion on things, it's like, I'll take that into advisement, but um, yeah, it's going to have to be like an overwhelming majority that, that makes us have to change something.
Yeah. I heard something one time that there's, and I fall into this where I kind of believe it, but sometimes I think there's a bit of a stretch, but I think there's some value behind it. And it said generally there's like three types, general, types of people in the world. There's wise, there's foolish, and there's evil, right? And the wise person, and this is where I try to be, even though they might be listening to a fool, they still lean in and they listen.
Mm,
And they're like, so you'd like the coconut water, you'd like the shorts, you want the barbell class. Why do you want that stuff? Right? I appreciate that you care about those things. And I listen, I try to learn from that and I try to hear that out. So I try hard to take that approach of being like, okay, don't me be the fool and be like, like, no, 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 and push it back. And because I have been the fool in the past by either saying, like you said, it's one or two people that speak the loudest. So I assume if I don't take care of it now, the whole gym's gonna be at the door with torches. So like having that wise approach, I think has been a helpful thing. And it
that's
also
good.
really de-escalates things when you do run into people um, and conflict, right? Because that happens sometimes. And I've learned that there's a really simple way to deal with conflict that helps disarm people.
Tell
Um,
me.
yeah. Okay. So here it is, right? You have the member that comes in. Maybe it's justified, maybe it's not, right? We've had some issues with like locks on the door and things going wrong with like, schedule mishaps and a couple early morning classes, just ball being dropped, you know, and it's just not acceptable on my side. It bothers me. But sometimes when you get feedback, it can be, you know, interesting or difficult to navigate. So here's how you handle it, right? One, you listen, you let the person talk, you let them vent, you let them do their thing, whether it's, you know, genuine or whether it's a little frustrated or angry, you just let them vent, let them talk. Let's say you're that person, right? So I let you talk. And then two, you relate to them. You can say, all right, Spencer, I understand why you feel that way. And if I was in your position, I think I could see where that would maybe frustrate me in these ways. Third one is, what would you suggest we do about that? And that third question is usually a pretty big stump, because most people that haven't thought through what they're addressing, how they're addressing it, they won't have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like you're trying to set them up to have it be a trap. But what I've found is that when you
Booyah!
yeah, what do you think of that? But when you let them talk, it shows that you respect where they're coming from, right?
Mm-hmm.
Give them a chance. It helps de-escalate it. And then when you also say, yeah, I can relate to that, that really de-escalates it, because people are like, oh, wow, you know, Chris heard me, Spencer heard me.
Mm-hmm.
But when you do say, what would you suggest that we do about that if you were in my shoes? It does help people have that lens shift of being like, well, wait a second, what would I do?
Yeah.
And like, how would I handle that? And maybe if we're being the wise, playing the wise role, maybe they've got a great suggestion. You're like, I never thought of that. I'm going to do that. Right. Or maybe
Oh,
it,
100%.
yeah. Or maybe it helps de-escalate it even further to where they're like, gosh, you know what? I don't know what I would do about that. You know, I'd really love to have that barbell class, but man, if I were in your shoes now, I think of it like, I don't know how I would do that. So anyway, so maybe just some advice on how to handle those
Man,
things.
man, that's really good. That's really good. I got nothing to say to do anything but agree with what you just said. It's good.
So there's our top three. Not top three, but there are three.
Three
How about
of
that?
many.
That either come resonate from the past or have been a very current, close to heart.
Well, I hope if anybody watches this, that's helpful. Like Chris always says, we've gotten some great encouraging messages from people that are in fitness and people that own gyms about how some of the things that we're talking to is not falling on deaf ears. So if, man, anything we said requires some further unpacking, which I'm sure, you know, out of context it might. If anything we said triggered you, you know, there may be a little bit more of a backstory, or maybe it's just something that you haven't got to yet in your own tenure. So if you're listening to this, thanks.
Yeah,
Anything else to add?
nada. Thanks, and leave us a comment on the YouTube page or you know, Instagram, whatever. It's like I'm
MySpace.
yeah, MySpace, and let us know how else we can help. We want to be a resource for you guys.